Yeah, we are starting, Honorable Nyambi. We are starting now. We are just waiting.
The load shedding will affect some of us, so the better we start.
The earlier we start.
Yeah.
Progress of load shedding. We will not want to waste a lot of time. We'll just go straight to allow the minister to make introductions. And after introductions, we just requested her to be part of us as and when we start the meeting, because she had to reschedule. You know, Wednesday is not a good day, the day we are having committees. Our initial program was that this meeting will happen at 15 hours so that we are able to accommodate all the meetings of ministers and cabinet as well. So, Honorable Minister, you are welcome. We are handing over to you to do the introduction, and we start with the presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to the members of the committee. And thank you, Chairperson. I must extend my appreciation for your understanding of our programs and schedule in your planning. And I really look forward to a good working relationship as we have started in that manner. I'm with the SABC Chairperson and also the Group CEO of the SABC and the Director General acting of the department. I must indicate that when we started, I took the opportunity to meet with all the boards of the entities that report under the department so that we can see what are the challenges and how do we deal with those challenges at hand. I must give this feedback specifically on the SABC, that since we started from the 5th of August, we've got a very good relationship with the board of the SABC, and we are trying to support the SABC on matters that will make sure that the SABC is sustainable and profitable organizations. And there are issues I'm aware of that are of interest to yourselves as it relates to the stability of the SABC. For instance, the matter of license fees that are owed by members of the public. We have supported the SABC on their request for amnesty on TV license issues. We are awaiting the concurrence of National Treasury so that we can take the matter to Cabinet to make sure that there is an amnesty on TV licenses. We believe that if the SABC achieves the amnesty, they'll be able to use the opportunity to improve their financial standing. I must also comment that the SABC is making very steady progress, which both ourselves and National Treasury have been pleased with in terms of their turnaround strategy. The SABC has so far met all the targets of their turnaround strategy, and they're on the last lap for the turnaround strategy. And in addition, there are issues of local content that the SABC has not been fulfilling, but we are working with them. We understand and appreciate that it will not be resolved overnight, but we are working with the SABC to make sure that they can get the local content right, but we know that it will be a gradual process, including the payment of the production houses as part of the work that the SABC does to make sure that it pays all its creditors. So in terms of the financial standing of the SABC, I'll leave that to the chairperson and the group CEO of the SABC. But in terms of the work that we are doing with the SABC, it's also the SABC have requested for an exemption on certain clauses of the PFMA. And from the department side, we are going to support the SABC on that request for exemption with the National Treasury, because that request for exemption will allow the SABC to turn around quicker in terms of their supply chain processes, but also to turn around quicker in terms of improving the positioning of the board, the positioning of the entity, so that the public broadcaster is sustainable. We are also working with the SABC and the department to look what are the future trends in broadcasting and how do we support the SABC to get there. I'm sure the chairperson will give feedback to the committee on the new trends around the over-the-top product that the SABC is looking to introduce, because it will be groundbreaking for a public broadcaster to lead on that front on their own. With that, chairperson, I'll thank you. I don't know if I should just stay a bit for a few questions, if there's specific questions that may be directed to me before I hand over to the chairperson of the SABC to present the report.
Sorry, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Sorry, Chairperson.
Honorable Ngwenya.
Thanks very much, Chair. Chair, I did check that you didn't ask the apology and that we're not coordinating or not. What I wanted to raise, Chair, is that I've got another meeting at 1 o'clock. I'll be happy when you ask questions to start with me, saying that when it's 1 o'clock, at least I'll be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ngwenya. I will try and we'll try our best that we can finish before 1 o'clock. I'm not saying we'll squeeze the time, but we must make sure that indeed we are not caught up by load shedding while we are still there. We acknowledge that apology. We also received the apology from Honorable Nana, who will also be joining another meeting. I will just check Committee Secretary if there are further apologies that you have.
Yes, Chair, I have an apology from Honorable Labuskaghni, who's ill. So she submitted an apology for today's meeting, as well as an apology from the Deputy Minister.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think if there are any questions that will require your attention, we'll make sure that we indeed inform your office through the committee secretary. If we can allow through you, Minister, the board chair to present the presentation to the committee for consideration. Anytime that you think you can be able to leave the meeting, you are free to do so. We just squeezed you that you should be part of the meeting as and when we're starting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Greetings to you and to your members. I also want to greet the Minister and the department colleagues, together with the executives from the SABC and everyone who's participating in this session. We are grateful for the opportunity to come back to this committee to brief you on where we are from the financial sustainability of the SABC and how the entity is performing. The Minister has comprehensively covered us, and we are grateful for the support that we are getting from the Minister in driving and ensuring that the turnaround of the SABC is fully embedded and fully implemented. As the Minister indicated, we are at 93% already of the implementation of the turnaround of the SABC, which is very good, and it talks to our efforts and collaborative input that we're getting from the Minister and the department in really getting the SABC where it needs to be. Of course, there are some areas that are still very critical to get SABC to be financially viable. One of those talks to the regulatory framework. When you look at issues like your mass carry and some of the submissions that we've made as the SABC, that talks to really getting SABC on a proper footing. The other element does really talk to the unfunded mandate. And the key there is to ensure that the resources that goes to SABC are equal to the mandate that SABC is expected to fulfill. Of course, our ability to collect revenue from a TV license point of view, we've made submission on that in terms of the future of how we see the future of TV licenses. But our ability to collect as much as we can in that area and maybe getting pay TV players assisting us in those efforts of collecting, it's important. Of course, with the pandemic, there is a decline in advertising revenue, and the SABC, of course, is also affected by what is happening globally in terms of our ability to attract revenue, advertising revenue, because of the pandemic. But of course, there is quite a number of efforts that are being implemented as part of our turnaround to really come up with new revenue streams, whether we talk about channel carriage deals or looking at us implementing our digital strategy, which will see SABC having its own OTT platform, which will allow us to commercialize and monetize a lot of our content, whether you talk about iCard material that is still attractive to a lot of South Africans. Those are the efforts that are being implemented. We've done quite a lot in addressing our issues as they relate to cost. And when the executives gives you a full briefing on that, they'll give you a sense of how much we've been able to manage and to reduce when it comes to costs related to labor cost. Of course, the next big cost line for us is signal distribution, which talks to the money that we pay for our signal distribution to Centec. And there are discussions at an advanced stage to also get that one managed, because those are some of the elements that I'm just highlighting, that as we drive our revenue side of the business, we are also driving cost down, because in any entity, it's about managing both revenue and your cost line. It is also exciting to see that the audit opinion of the SABC has really improved, because we left with one qualification that talks to irregular. And when you look at that, it talks to the historical opening balances, which predates this board and predates management. And of course, we have inherited all of that, and we have to deal with everything that pertains to the future of the SABC. But when you look at the comment from the Auditor General, they do commend the SABC in terms of the internal controls that we've put in, the improvement on the governance. And when you look at all of those elements, you can clearly see that a lot of work has been done to ensure that the entity gets governance in place and deal with whatever issues that may have resulted to the total collapse of governance that SABC has suffered from. And I'm very confident that with the stability from a leadership point of view, the support that we're getting from the minister, and the commitment by the SABC leadership, board, management, and our staff, SABC is on track to a total turnaround that will make all South Africans proud of what the SABC is able to deliver as a public broadcaster. And with those opening remarks, Honorable Chair, I would want to hand over to the Group CEO, who will then dive into greater details of what this committee has requested to be briefed on. If the Chair allows me, I would want to hand over to Mr. Madoda Mxakwe, who is the Group CEO of the SABC.
Good morning, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, and Honorable members, colleagues, as well as the SABC Board Chair. It's indeed a pleasure to come and share with this committee the progress that we are making as the SABC in turning around this institution. If I could just get into the main slide, which talks to the turnaround plan. Here, honorable members, I would want to first give a bit of a background. We have a turnaround plan that is divided into 3 phases. The first phase of the turnaround plan is what we really call stabilizing phase. This really includes the need to make sure that the SABC is properly stabilized, to ensure that the proper business fundamentals in the organization are in place. And we started this in 2018 and it moved right up until 2019. Essentially, the stabilizing phase includes issues like the development of a turnaround strategy. This was approved by the board, also approved by the minister as well as the portfolio committee, and we have been implementing that during this phase. Linked to that has been the need to deal with all of the legacy governance failures that the SABC went through, from the recommendations of the ad hoc parliamentary committee, reports from the SIU, as well as the reports that were internal from a forensic audit point of view. So really the first phase has been to reset the organization on the right path. At the end of it all, it's about the need to fulfill the public mandate of the SABC, which is to inform, educate, as well as entertain South Africans. And that is really the key mandate of the SABC. And in doing that, we have had to ensure we put proper controls in place from a financial point of view. We have had to ensure that we recruit and select the right team. The chairperson spoke about the need for stability, and this is one of the areas where we have had to focus on. Also a culture change within the organization that we've implemented. The second phase of the turnaround process is what we call the enabling stage. Here, and this is now started from 2019 until date, the focus there, honorable members, has been to ensure that we develop a very relevant, vibrant target operating model that is in line with the 21st century. We want to be a relevant, agile, as well as a digitized broadcaster. So all efforts on the target operating model have been in line with that. Linked to that was the development of an organizational structure that talks directly to the capabilities that are needed to drive high performance at the SABC in order for us to be a high-performing organization. We also have had to revise our business models, particularly from the sales point of view, because all our efforts are geared towards generating revenue growth. As members know, in terms of the funding model of the SABC, 85% is really the way we get revenue is that we need to go to the market and generate sufficient revenue in order to carry the unfunded mandate. About 12% of that comes from TV licenses, and we get 3% grants from government, and that is ring-fenced in as far as Channel Africa radio station is concerned, as well as some of the few. So what essentially that means is that as the team, we have had to devise very aggressive business models from a revenue generation point of view. And we have seen that it is coming, it is improving. Over and above that, we also looked at diversified revenue streams in order to ensure that the SABC is sustainable. We now ensuring that our operations are more agile and are more structured and geared towards servicing the industry. And once again, at the heart of it is a financially sustainable organization that can ensure that we fulfill our mandate. We have been able to see stability at EXCO level. The committee, the last time we reported, there were a lot of acting positions at EXCO, and I'm glad to say and announce now that all of the top execs positions at EXCO have been filled, and we have the required competencies to drive high performance in the organization. We've also focused on ensuring that we improve our supply chain processes. To Chairperson's point, you may recall that 3 years ago, we had a disclaimer and we're now sitting on a qualified with one audit finding, which we're actually dealing with. So we're really accelerating the turnaround plan, and this is the phase now where we have had to reduce the cost base. You may have seen that we have reduced the over 41% expenditure annually, which was due to the high cost base when it comes to compensation. And the next point now is to deal with the here really exorbitant price of signal distribution, and we're engaging with the shareholder as well as the organization concerned to deal with this matter. Where we are now going, which is going to be the last phase of the turnaround plan, is to ensure that we move to the growth phase where there's going to be financial sustainability for the SABC. The key really there is to ensure proper going concern for the organization. We want to ensure that as an organization we are profitable in order to sufficiently fulfill the public mandate. Very key to that is the need to acquire compelling, relevant content, whether you're talking about the radio stations or even the television stations. We want to be a high-performing broadcaster, which is going to be the next phase, and the need now to move towards our own OTT platforms, which is at the phase where we're going to be going out to market. The chair has already spoken about some of the regulatory and legislative reforms that will be necessary for us to be more of an agile and competitive organization. And we are indeed engaging with the ministry in order to deal with those things. So at the heart of the third phase of the acceleration of the turnaround plan is long-term sustainability, is to ensure that we accelerate revenue growth. We want to also improve and enhance our governance and risks framework as the SABC. Coming to this slide, to Chair's point, you will see that currently we're standing at 87%. When we got given the bailout by government, there were certain preconditions that came with a variety of activities in line with all our strategic pillars as the SABC. These have been properly fulfilled, and thanks to the commitment and the hard work of all of the SABC employees that have ensured that we are now at 93% in the implementation of the turnaround plan. But very importantly for us is to ensure that we develop a huge appetite when it comes to increasing revenue growth. And we have seen, particularly in a very constrained economic environment, month on month and quarter to quarter, we have significantly improved when it comes to revenue generation. The next slide, please. Honorable members, these are the key pillars that drive the SABC strategy. The first one is financial sustainability and governance. You will see there that we are sitting currently at over 88%. That pillar focuses mainly on increasing revenue growth, on ensuring that we contain cost as much as possible, but also dealing with the huge cost drivers of the SABC, which in this case have been the cost of the bloated structure, as well as the cost of signal distribution. We're doing extremely well there. We have also developed sales models that talk directly to the needs of the industry. We have also developed what we call an integrated value proposition for the market, where we sell an integrated solution that includes all of the 19 radio stations we have, as well as the TV channels that we have, and some presence on the digital platforms when we go to the market. It has really helped us to be more relevant, to be more competitive, as well as to be more agile as an organization. The second point is when it comes to content and platforms, where we have hit the 100% achievement against the set objectives. Content and platforms really refers to the portfolio of assets that the SABC has. And this refers directly to the 19 radio stations, as well as the television channels. And it's actually divided into two. Firstly, is the need to reach as many South Africans as possible via our platforms in order to fulfill the public mandate. And secondly, is to ensure that we use that reach to take a very compelling product to the market in order to sell this integrated value proposition for the industry. Human resources, we've been driving a lot of activities there, hence why at 100% we have had to review our organizational structure to make sure that it's more agile, to ensure that we have the right people on the right seats, to ensure we have the right internal competencies. But at the heart of it is to really drive high performance as the organization. For the first time at the SABC, we now have every single employee signing a performance contract. And we are focusing on ensuring that individually and collectively as employees, we can be able to turn around the organization because our employees are our greatest assets. Linked to that is the succession planning and the various development when it comes to talent management, because we want to ensure that as the organization, we retain the scarce skills that we need to drive the organization to the next level. When it comes to transmission and digital migration, you'll see that we're at 67%. Here, it's really two things. We want to move to the digital transformation journey of this. The following part, the first slide there in terms of the summary, before I hand over to the CFO, you will see that in the past 3 years, we come from a net loss of over R1 billion. What we have done strategically in the past 3 years, we have ensured that year on year, there is a significant reduction in net losses for the SABC. And the idea really is when it comes to the first phase of our journey, we want to ensure that the SABC is profitable. The second thing is the impact of COVID in terms of the decline on revenues, despite the fact that we have seen month on month in the past fiscal, a very solid performance. We have had, as the SABC, you know that we have a very important developmental mandate, which is to inform and educate South Africans. And in line with that, we have had to displace most of our paying advertising programs in order to accommodate all government messaging that was geared towards COVID. And these would have been your normal press conferences by various ministers, the presidential addresses. This also included the public service announcements where we have had to ensure that the nation is informed both on radio as well as on television. But what is really important is that in the last 3 to 5 years, we have been able to manage to keep the employee cost down. And this is very key because this was one of the biggest inhibitors when it comes to the financial health of the organization. So what I would want to do now, Chairperson, with your permission, is just to ask the CFO to share the next few slides on the financial performance, and we'll be available to take any questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honourable Chair of the Committee and committee members, Minister and Deputy Minister, my board chair, and other colleagues here. Yes, I will be taking you through a few slides, maybe just to set the context. We were requested to brief you on the stabilising or resolving of the SABC's financial challenges, in particular what was owed to creditors, unpaid television licenses, then also some operational challenges, which would include a reduction of cost structures and staff retrenchments. In a hope to meet your expectations, the next number of slides that I specifically will be dealing with reflects firstly on our financial performance over the 13-year period. The CEO has spoken to that. Including for you is the expenditure analysis. We've added some information on financial misconduct instances, the audit outcomes, year-to-date performance, audit finding status, and then I will be ending with a summary and brief overview of our working capital management status and the financial position of the organization at the very end. The CEO has firstly spoken to the 13-year performance, so I will not elaborate on that. What I share with you here is the expenditure performance as we reported over a 3-year period ended the 31st of March 2021 as per our annual report. I think most importantly, the 3 big contributors, the fourth one being our operational expenditure, with some comments where our biggest cost driver was our employee cost. You can see the big green bars have been coming down over the last 3 years. Combination of moratoriums on recruitment, natural attrition, and then as well, of course, as the Section 189 process towards the end of the past financial year. In this financial year, under review year, 31st of March 2021, there was one once-off item, that was the cost of the retrenchment, and it amounted to about 177 million rand. So it, in a way, artificially inflated this 2.6 billion rand that you see here at the end. The outcome of the retrenchment process, and there will be more detail around that later on, but it permanently reset the quantum of our employee cost by between 200 and 300 million going forward. We do currently have a number of vacancies that we're busy recruiting, but even with that returning or those positions being filled, and noting that we've taken a different approach to our recruitment and selection process, as well as our remuneration strategy, etc., that we don't believe our payroll cost will ever return to the levels that it was in the past. Next big line item is our investment in content. It's the blue bars. This is typically not the trend that one would have wanted to see, moving from 1.7 billion to about just over $1 billion in the past financial year. We're currently forecasting spending about 1.3 billion on content in the current financial year. Again, a number of reasons. In this particular year, 19 and 20, we were confronted by the cash constraints. We get our bailout towards the end, first tranche in 1 October 2019, the balance of the tranche 31st or 30th of March 2020. And then we are confronted by COVID as it unfolds, and the content investment strategy then again is disrupted. Under level 5, for example, no productions could be executed. Under level 4, a number of our productions had to adapt to the regulations. We then sort of see some level of recovery in Q2 and part of Q3. But then we are hit by the second wave again. And again, a number of production houses find themselves disrupted by both a combination of COVID infections as well as the impact of the regulations. However, it allows us time to also reset how we procure content in the sense of the financial parameters within which we procure, and also things like the spread in regions and the local content, etc. So we are hoping to start seeing that strategy unfold in the balance of this financial year, and of course in the next financial year. Signal and distribution, the chair and the CEO have spoken about it. It's these orange bars. Mainly it has remained flat. We see a little bit of an upside in the 2021 year. This is as a result of the fact that we did not have a tariff increase in that year, and we also got a cash discount in that year. And then, of course, there's the other initiatives that's ongoing to permanently reduce that line. And the last big contributor is the operational expenditure. It's sort of this teal colored line. It moves from 572 million to 447 million rand, a combination of cost austerity measures, permanent cost reduction measures, also, of course, aligned with National Treasury's cost optimization guidelines received. We then have also, over the past 3 years, implemented a number of initiatives that would see many processes being more efficient, anything from the way we engaged in telephonically PIBXs, IPBXs, to printing, all those kind of things. And of course, in the last year, the fact that the vast majority of us worked from home, which saw also a number of efficiencies being generated from that. And those are sort of how we believe we have, in most cases, permanently are making a dent in our main expenditure line items. When it comes to fruitless and wasteful expenditure and irregular expenditure, We are optimistic that the fact that our in-year instances, this line item over a 3-year period, reducing from 336 to 111 million, a 66% reduction over a 3-year period, shows that how the organization engaged with this topic has matured, that our SCM processes have strengthened, and that we are also, with a combination of consequence management, etc., changing the culture in the organization. Important to note in the 111 million rand, that 90% or nearly 100 million of that is multi-year contracts. So instances that were incurred, in fact, 3 years plus in the past, but because the contract is still active and it was not an unlawful contract, it was just that the supply chain process was not followed as it should have been, we are required to continue to report it. But we are getting services and the contracts are lawful from that perspective. So the only true in-year instances in this financial year is about 10 million rand. It is mainly two contributing factors, a software package that currently operates outside of supply chain. We are in this current financial year bringing it under the supply chain umbrella, and then that irregular expenditure will no longer need to be incurred or reported. And the other one related to two specific events that we had no choice in, and that has since in this current financial year also been duly addressed. And I'll talk a bit more about supply chain in a second. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure, a similar kind of trend. The contributors, again, in this current financial year, two big things mainly contribute. A lease in one of our regions that was entered into in 2017. It is currently the subject of a SIU investigation. We have been engaging also via the various legal processes to be able to exit that lease. Unfortunately, the COVID also ensured that, or resulted in the legislative processes sort of not happening at the pace that we needed it to. But as I sit here, we exited this lease at the end of October, so that irregular expenditure fruitless and wasteful expenditure will no longer be incurred. The other one is what we call interest that we need to pay on repeat fees. It's an industry practice. It comes from the 2007 approximately. We are in the course of changing that. It does involve a number of stakeholders, particularly outside the organization, as well as engagements with the creative industry. That process has started in this current financial year, and we are optimistic that that item will then also no longer result in fruitless and wasteful. If you then look at supply chain, a brief snapshot of some of the main interventions that we've made in the department and in the organization's engagement in processes over the past 3 years. However, even the few items I'm going to mention to you does not do actually the level of work that's taken place justice. But not only have we twice reviewed the policies and SOPs, we've implemented a number of checklists throughout the supply chain processes. We've established a compliance department which performs compliance activities over a number of the tenders, particularly focused on the more complex tenders and tenders above a certain level. We also involve our group internal audit in assuring the validity, accuracy, and the honoring of the supply chain constitutional principles in some of the main tenders. The leadership has eventually stabilized after nearly 4 years without a permanent head of the department. We had a colleague join us on the 1st of November, so we now have a permanently established leadership there. We have also implemented the permanent appointment or issuing of appointment letters to our committees, BSc and BACs and BECs in particular. There's a well-established process where we look at lessons learned from whether it be audit findings, irregular expenditure, or other processes that is shared with the committees to ensure that they know what not to repeat. We have established almost a frequent training and awareness process in supply chain and with businesses large, and with the committee members that sits from business on these committees, so that they are constantly aware of what's expected. We have also had a number of engagement with Treasury actually performed the training at an organizational level, whether it will be on supply chain practices required by the PFMA specifically, but also then on irregular fruitless and wasteful expenditure. We have developed guidelines and policies that deals with the prevention, detection, monitoring, and management of irregular expenditure. We've established a guideline for consequence management of financial misconduct. We've established a loss control committee, and we have also put in place a rigorous consequence management process. We are currently focusing on expanding the consequence management to the instances that were not identified in audits. And we have an action plan and project plan, in fact, for how we're going to tackle this still in this financial year. What we have done on consequence management, I know it's a topic that often comes up, so I want to make a statement around that. The irregular expenditure in instances identified in the course of the past 3 audits, the consequence management of that has taken place. And as I indicated, the majority of that typically sits in supply chain, unfortunately. And we are now at this point in time broadening the scope for the consequence management to also where business units and particularly where committees were involved. It becomes a little bit more complex. But we are currently dealing with it in this year. Our compliance department have been strengthened with 2 senior investigators, which is going to help us in this initiative in particular. And all of these activities we're hoping to culminate in us being able to engage with National Treasury, where we can have a conversation about ring fencing irregular expenditure, particularly before 1 April 2018. Before that period, both the combination of finding responsible parties as well as record keeping becomes a particular challenge. So if you look at the 2.8 billion that you see here, almost all of that is opening balance related and predates that 1 April 2018 period. And as much as there is work, it is difficult because of the reasons I mentioned. We have, in the course of the audit, been able to get a clean bill of health on confirming the completeness of the register for the year that we're under audit now, so the 2021 year. The audit finding that resulted in our qualified audit relates to the completeness of the opening balance before this year. So the opening balance as at 31st of March 2020, in fact. And in that respect, we have currently managed to confirm 60% of the completeness of the full population of payments for the period 20 and 2019. And we have also completed the completeness activity for the current financial year for Q1. And the team is currently focusing on bringing it up to date in Q2, and as well as dealing with the other 40% in the 2019 and 2020 financial years. So a lot of information, but it's a topic that gets a lot of airtime. So I wanted to share the detail with you. The audit, we've spoken about it. I think the greens and reds, bullets, robot status really captures how the progress have been over the period. Irregular expenditure, I've indicated it's as a result of the opening balances, and I have hope that my sharing of what we're doing about that opening balance added value. The compliance one is, unfortunately, we do continue to incur irregular expenditure in year, so it is also to systematically continue to change the behavior of our organization on the topic and engagement in supply chain in general. We had an unfortunate instance with performance information because there was actually just an error in one of our systems, and that has been corrected since. So we hope that that bullet will not be read in future. If you look at the progress in audit findings, again, speaking to stabilizing the organization as well as enhancing and strengthening the internal control environment, of particular interest would be the material findings, which is the one that results in your audit qualification, reducing it from 68% to 68 to just 7 over the 4 years in question, and overall 214 findings in the 2018 financial year to 86 only, of which 79 are typically your Annexure B or immaterial audit findings. So we hope that that also illustrates the significant progress that's been made, 60% reduction in the total in the periods under review here. Just a brief overview of the in-year performance. We had a good Q1, but Q2 has been particularly tough. I'm not going to go into detail. Q2 was affected by the riots, as well as the adjustments of our team internally to both the new target operating model and the new way of engaging with our clients and the models we've developed. The CEO did speak to that. Connected with that were the training that were required. And yes, there were more vacancies than what we anticipated after the Section 189 process, and there'll be a bit more detail there later on. But effectively, we are still confronted with about 20 to 20% vacancy rate in the organization. The recruitment is ongoing, but the majority of the recruitment provided promotional opportunities for internal team members. So what you would then see is that your vacancies have just moved to a different level in the organization. So there continues to be a large focus on recruitment, and the drive is ongoing. What we have managed in this year to date, despite the impact on the revenue, as I indicated, you can see year to date we were behind about 564 million from our budget to our actual, but it was offset by continued significant savings of underspent in the expenditure line. In fact, as much as 854 million rand year to date. The main contributors, as you can see in this bullet here, one would be broadcasting cost, because it's connected to revenue. So if revenue is less than what we budgeted, broadcasting will be 2. The operational expenditure, that the savings that I mentioned earlier, continued in this year. Also, as the teams were adjusting and the supply chain processes in the organization at large, not just in the supply chain department, were gaining traction. So our operating expenditure were a little bit less than budget, and also our underspend in content. It's an unfortunate underspend, but the initiatives are underway as we adjusted as well to be able to recover that. An important factor in the content, and there was brief reference by the Minister to it, is our engagement with National Treasury to secure exemptions from specific sections of the PFMA that will allow us to be much more agile and competitive as far as it pertains to content amortization. And then this bullet here speaks to the other saving, which is in the employee cost because of the vacancies that were unexpected and which I referred to. This little graph on the right-hand side just shows you that we have started to recover and not yet to the levels before COVID. A particular positive message is in the sponsorship lines. It's this little blue line here at the bottom. You can unfortunately not quite see the significant change, but if you look at the numbers from 170 million to about 297 million, you can see that there's been positive inroads made in that specific line item. Brings me to TV licenses. They find themselves, apart from the general non-compliance that's been a constant theme as it pertains to this specific revenue line, they were particularly affected by the harsh economic circumstances that the pandemic brought. And as such, all the reds are really your indication that we are performing below budget. A number of reasons over and above the non-compliance is the fact that our debt collecting agencies have been struggling to meet their expectations. Again, it's because of the of the economic conditions that makes it harder for our audiences to settle their licenses, as people have obviously been losing their jobs, etc. We have put the DCAs on performance measures, and we're hoping that that could recover. I'll talk a bit more about the marketing initiatives that's ongoing here in a second. We continue to have reported also in our annual report an approximate 82% evasion rate. Putting that to you in numbers means that we can actually invoice more than 4 billion per annum. We can only recognize less than 800 million of that based on the probability that your TV license holder will actually pay. We look at the trends and behavior of our TV license holders. We have more than 10 million license holders, but just about 2 million of those settle their licenses. We're able to collect just under about 900 million of the 4 billion that we invoice, to give you a sense. We are conscious of the fact that our content perhaps is not as attractive and fresh as it can be, and the initiatives for that remain ongoing, both internally and as we deal with the external environment. Then at the bottom here are a few of the things that the team is doing. They had a very good September, collected exceptionally well. October, unfortunately, was not what we wanted it to be. Currently, we're in the month of Black Fridays, and there are a host of initiatives working with our retail partners to get maximum benefit from it. But even the sale of new TVs obviously impacts us. So you can see even new licenses are less than what we budgeted for. And connected with that would be renewals, which is the economic impact. We have brought on board our global positioning system initiative, information system initiative. We are currently ramping that up to about 100,000 households that is being assessed for their TV licenses and encouraging them through communications, etc., to pay. We've also made it much more easier to pay online and with our retail partners, so that it's as simple as possible for a TV license holder to settle their license. This is just a brief snapshot, Q2 and year-to-date trends in the expenditure. I'm not going to stand still with that. To give you a sense, as at the end of September, noting that our audit conclusion was a month delayed, we'd already settled 33% of our audit findings, and activities are feverishly ongoing in that respect. Internal audit remains ongoing work because there's constant reports that's being issued. Working capital, big important part is really just the gap between this purple line, which is the creditors days a year ago versus now. So if you look at September, you can see our creditors days are approximately 35 versus the 97 it was in September last year. And the important thing is that we negotiated a payment holiday with one of our main partners, signal distribution partner, that allowed us to prioritize our SMMEs and other creditors. We have since caught up. You can see how the payment days reduced towards the end of the year. Just again, confirmation, 35 days versus the 97 a year ago. Debtors days are more or less on track. It is within the credit terms that's been negotiated. You can also see with the majority of our debtors under current and per their credit terms, that 88% is actually quite a good debtors age analysis. Financial position. Important part, at the end of that month under review year, we had about 1.4 billion in the bank account, but of that, about 1 billion is still in ring fence for bailout, and particularly for content and CapEx. CapEx has been slow because of all the disruptions that we have struggled in general with. I've touched on a lot of them. Content fully utilized their original 800 million that we applied for, and we are currently wanting to redirect the 400 million that we have still available for them purely to fresh and compelling content. And there, as a number of initiatives are and were still in process in the past 6 months, I've been struggling to gain traction. When it comes to going concern, as much as it was a matter of emphasis in the course of our audit, because of the projected losses that we were still going to make in this financial year, a number of the typical pillars of a going concern has shown good recovery. Yes, the conscious liquidity is driven to a most extent by the 1 billion rand in the bailout that is still ring-fenced. Our focus now is on profitability, solvency, and revenue growth. This financial year, we still budgeted the loss. We are endeavoring to achieve break even in the next financial year. And with a combination of solid cash management, the continued cost discipline that we've embedded in the organization, the strong support from our financial institution partners, we remain optimistic that we will be able to manage our obligations when they are due, despite the continued projected losses in this financial year. We also continue to work very closely with all our strategic partners in suppliers and goods and services. We have not since, I think, 2 years before we received the first tranche of the bailout, had to delay any payments on content. All our content service providers are paid as and when they due. And we also have a strong relationship with them and open communication lines were we ever to go back to the state we were in 2018, 2019. And that, Chair of the Committee, is my part done. I believe I will hand over now to our GE for Human Resources, who is in the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, fellow colleagues and Honorable Chair. As the CFO has already reported and the GCO, the SABC headcount and compensation cost, we have seen a significant decline, which has been influenced primarily by two factors. One was the freezing of positions in the previous performance and financial cycle. And the second one was as a result of Section 189 process, which was concluded at on the 31st of March 2021. Headcount as at 31st March 2021 was 2,117 of permanent field position versus a total number of 3,465 positions on the structure. It must be noted that the structure that was the 3,465, that was before we transitioned to the new structure, which has been effective from 1st of April 2021. With the total compensation bill for the previous financial year of 2.2 billion. Post Section 189, the total number of positions in the approved structure that include the vacancies, there are 2,684. You will see that the difference account for the reduction that we have already done. It means even if we were to be successful in filling all the vacancies that we have indicated in the table there, the total number of positions will be 2,684. But we know at operational level that there's always a lag in filling some of the position because some are as a result of retirement. If we judge by history, most of our vacancies that were created, safe to say, excluding Section 189, were as a result of retirement. So we expect that going forward, those will be the main vacancies. The current 448, they are as a result of those who were promoted upwards and those that could not be filled, and those were prioritized in two parts. The first is priority one that we intended to fill during the course of this first semester, that was first quarter of the year, which was April to June, and those were not fully filled, and September to October. In total, as at end of September, we filled 260 positions. Year-to-date total compensation, we expect that the compensation is going to end at about 1.8 billion, but that is obviously subject to us being successful in filling the position. If we don't, it may end up at 1.5. So there will be a saving with regard to the budget. But what is that we are expecting going forward is the implementation of the 3 reduction strategies that were implemented to reduce the total payroll bill. The first one was there will be no salary increase for this financial cycle. I can confirm it has been implemented, so that in the summary that the CFO has made, it will save us almost 100 million in this financial year. If you project that over 3 years, that's where the 300 million will be saved. However, should we break even earlier than the 3 years, we have committed that there will be a consideration for the salary increase. The last 2 parts that goes with the reduction was the change in 2 elements of our conditions of service, namely reduction of sick leave from the